Hey everyone, Tutor Brian. Here's a book review of Bring Up the Bodies by Hilary Mantel. I have two copies in front of me from my local library. One is large print, so it's easier to see the words, but the pages are more with the large print. 5 years ago, I did a review on Wolf Hall, which is the first in this trilogy of historical fiction novels centered around the principal character, Thomas Cromwell, one of the most important advisors to King Henry VIII of England. They take bits of history and then flesh them out into a lively and engaging story. The first book, focused on the rise of Cromwell, delves into his backstory, showing how he became who he was and become prominent and powerful. The second book continues along the timeline. A few years pass and he's already established, so it's not necessarily about his rise anymore. It's about some of the scheming and the machinations he does to get the results he wants, but more so the results the king wants, Henry Tudor. And in comparison, first book to second book, for some reason I thought Wolf Hall was a little bit more in terms of the humor. It's subtle humor, but there was wit in the writing, and the jokes are just embedded into the whole storytelling. But Bring Up the Body is still very similar in the writing and the way Mantel really shows the characters, how they interact with each other. Dialogue is one of the key parts, the way they speak to each other, and then it also includes the thoughts of the principal character, Thomas Cromwell. Not that Bring Up the Bodies is without the same wit, humor, character portrayals as the first one. Maybe it just had to do with the rise in the how he went from nobody to somebody. Whereas in book two, he's already established, Cromwell's already established, and so it's not necessarily anymore about his background, but more so what he's doing in the moment to help the king achieve his goals for the good of England. Sometimes they may be aligned, the goals of each person, but it's a tightrope to walk, to not kind of to keep people pleased with, because it's not just the king. There's all these other members of the royal court, and there are different factions that work sometimes in alignment, sometimes against each other. So he has to kind of navigate all of that, especially in Bring Up the Bodies, different supporters of the current regime, the previous regime, different fighting forces, fighting families at work, claims to the throne, so much to handle. But there's, as the picture shows in the front of the book, Anne Boleyn, Queen number 2, that's the main part of Bring Up the Bodies. It's further down the timeline than Wolf Hall, and each of the books, that's how it works, is snapshots of different parts of the historical timeline. I wouldn't say it's necessary to have a detailed knowledge of history to enjoy it. It helps that the author does a good job of explaining, identifying, clarifying, elaborating all these different bits of information that are necessary to follow along with the story, especially all the characters. There's so many characters, but the author does a good job of just building in ways to identify who is who. I think it would be better to look at some of the actual text instead of just saying what my opinions are of the book. Here goes with the readings. Henry's summer, on the whole, has been a success. Through Berkshire, Wiltshire, and Somerset, he has shown himself to the people on the roads, and, when the rain isn't bucketing down, they've stood by the roads and cheered. Why would they not? You cannot see Henry and not be amazed. Each time you see him you are struck afresh by him as if it were the first time. A massive man, bull-necked, his hair receding, face fleshing out, blue eyes, and a small mouth that is almost coy. His height is 6 feet 3 inches, and every inch bespeaks power. His carriage, his person, are magnificent. His rages are terrifying, his vows and curses, his molten tears. But there are moments when his great body will stretch and ease itself, his brow clear. He will plump himself down next to you on a bench and talk to you like your brother, like a brother might, if you had one, or a father even, a father of an ideal sort. How are you? Not working too hard? Have you had your dinner? What did you dream last night? The danger of a progress like this is that a king who sits at ordinary tables on an ordinary chair can be taken as an ordinary man. But Henry is not ordinary. What if his hair is receding and his belly advancing? The Emperor Charles, when he looks in the glass, would give a province to see the Tudor's visage instead of his own crooked countenance, his hooked nose almost touching his chin. King Francis, a beanpole, would pawn his Dauphin to have shoulders like the King of England. Any qualities they have, Henry reflects them back, double the size. If they are learned, he is twice learned. If merciful, he is the exemplar of mercy. If they are gallant, he is the pattern of knight errantry, from the biggest book of knights you can think of. All the same, in village alehouses up and down England, they are blaming the king and Anne Boleyn for the weather, the concubine, the great whore. If the king would take back his lawful wife Catherine, the rain would stop. And indeed, who can doubt that everything would be different and better if only England were ruled by village idiots and their drunken friends? They move back towards London slowly, so that by the time the king arrives the city will be free from suspicion of plague. In cold chantry chapels under the gaze of walled-eyed virgins, the king prays alone. He doesn't like him to pray alone. He wants to know what he's praying for. His old master, Cardinal Wolsey, would have known. His relations with the Queen, as the summer draws to its official end, are chary, uncertain, and fraught with distrust. Anne Boleyn is now 34 years old, an elegant woman with a refinement that makes mere prettiness seem redundant. Once sinuous, she has become angular. She retains her dark glitter, now rubbed a little, flaking in places. Her prominent dark eyes she uses to good effect, and in this fashion. She glances at a man's face, then her regard flits away, as if unconcerned, indifferent. There is a pause, as it might be a breath. Then slowly, as if compelled, she turns her gaze back to him. Her eyes rest on his face. She examines this man. She examines him as if he is the only man in the world. She looks as if she is seeing him for the first time and considering all sorts of uses for him, all sorts of possibilities which he has not even thought of himself. To her victim the moment seems to last an age, during which shivers run up his spine, though in fact the trick is quick, cheap, effective, and repeatable. It seems to the poor fellow that he is now distinguished among all men. He smirks, he preens himself, he grows a little taller, he grows a little more foolish. He has seen Anne work her trick on lord and commoner, on the king himself. You watch the man's mouth gapes a little, and he becomes her creature. Almost always it works. It has never worked on him. He is not indifferent to women, God knows, just indifferent to Anne Boleyn. It galls her. He should have pretended. He has made her queen, she has made him minister, but they are uneasy now, each of them vigilant, watching each other for some slip that will betray real feeling and so give advantage to one or the other, as if only dissimulation will make them safe. But Anne is not good at hiding her feelings. She is the king's quicksilver darling, slipping and sliding from anger to laughter. There have been times this summer when she would smile secretly at him behind the king's back, or grimace to warn him that Henry was out of temper. At other times she would ignore him, turn her shoulder, her black eyes sweeping the room and resting elsewhere. To understand this, if it bears understanding, we must go back to the last spring, when Thomas More was still alive. Anne had called him in to talk of diplomacy. Her object was a marriage contract, a French prince for her infant daughter Elizabeth. But the French proved skittish in negotiation. The truth is, even now they do not fully concede that Anne is queen. They are not convinced that her daughter is legitimate. Anne knows what lies behind their reluctance, and somehow it is his fault, his, Thomas Cromwell's. She had accused him openly of sabotaging her. He did not like the French and did not want the alliance, she claimed. Did he not shirk a chance to cross the sea for face-to-face talks? The French were ready to negotiate, she says, and you were expected, Master Secretary, and you said you were ill, and my Lord Brother had to go, and failed, he had sighed, very sadly. I know you, Anne says. You are never ill, are you, unless you wish to be? And besides, I perceive how things stand with you. You think that when you are in the city and not at the court, you are not under our eye. But I know you are too friendly with the Emperor's man. I am aware Chapuis is your neighbor. But is that a reason why your servants should be always in and out of each other's houses? Anne was wearing that day rose pink and dove gray. The color should have had a fresh maidenly charm, but all he could think of were stretched innards, umbels, and tripes, gray-pink intestines looped out of a living body. He had a second batch of recalcitrant friars to be dispatched to Tyburn, to be slit up and grollocked by the hangman. They were traitors and deserved a death, but it is a death exceeding most in cruelty. The pearls around her neck looked at him like little beads of fat, and as she argued, she would reach up and tug them. He kept his eyes on her fingertips, nails flashing like tiny knives. Still, as he says to Chapuis, while I am in Henry's favor, I doubt the Queen can do me any harm. She has her spites, she has her little rages, she is volatile, and Henry knows it. It was what fascinated the king, to find someone so different from those soft, kind blondes who drift through men's lives and leave not a mark behind. But now when Anne appears, he sometimes looks harassed. You can see his gaze growing distant when she begins one of her rants, and if he were not such a gentleman, he would pull his hat down over his ears. No, he tells the ambassador, it's not Anne who bothers me, it's the men who she collects about her. Her family, her father, the Earl of Wiltshire, who likes to be known as Monseigneur, and her brother George, Lord Rochford, whom Henry has appointed to his privy chamber rota. George is one of the newer staff, because Henry likes to stick with men he is used to, who were his friends when he was young. From time to time, the cardinal would sweep them out, but they would seep back like dirty water. Once they were young men of a spirit, young men of Elan. A quarter of a century has passed, and they are gray or balding, flabby or paunchy, gone in the fetlock or missing some fingers, but still as arrogant as satraps and with the mental refinement of a gatepost. And now there is a new litter of pups, Weston and George Rochford and their ilk, whom Henry has taken up because he thinks they keep him young. These men, the old ones and the new, are with the king from his uprising to his downlaying, and all his private hours in between. They are with him in his stool chamber, and when he cleans his teeth and spits into a silver basin, they swab him with towels and they lace him into his doublet and hose. They know his person, each mole or freckle, each bristle in his beard, and they map the islands of his sweat when he comes from the tennis court and rips off his shirt. They know more than they should, as much as his laundress and his doctor. They talk of what they know, and they know when he visits a queen to try to bounce a son into her, or when on a Friday, the day no Christian copulates, he dreams of a phantom woman and stains his sheets. They sell their knowledge at a high price. They want favors done. They want their own derelictions ignored. They think they are special and they want to be aware of it. Ever since he, Cromwell, came up in Henry's service, he has been mollifying these men, flattering them, cajoling them, and seeking always an easy way of working, a compromise. But sometimes, when for an hour they block him from access to his king, they can't keep the grins from their faces. I have probably, he thinks, gone as far as I can to accommodate them. Now they must accommodate me or be removed. The mornings are chilly now, and fat-bellied clouds bob after the royal party as they dawdle through Hampshire, the roads turning within days from dust to mud. Henry is reluctant to hurry back to business. I wish it were always August, he says. They are en route to Farnham, a small hunting party, when a report is galloped along the road. Cases of plague have appeared in the town. Henry, brave on the battlefield, pales almost before their eyes and wrenches around his horse's head. Where to? Anywhere will do, anywhere but Farnham. He leans forward in the saddle, removing his hat, and he speaks to the king. We can go before our time to Basing House. Let me send a fast man to warn William Paulet. Then, so as not to burden him, to avet them for a day. Edward Seymour is at home, and I can hunt out supplies if he is unprovided. He drops back, letting Henry ride ahead. He says to Rafe, Send to Wolf Hall, fetch Mistress Jane. What, here? She can ride. Tell old Seymour to put her on a good horse. I shall want her at Helvetham for Wednesday evening. Any later will be too late. Rafe reins in, poised to turn. But, sir, the Seymours will ask why Jane and why the hurry. And why are we going to Helvetham when there are other houses nearby, the Westons at Sutton Place? Drown or hang the Westons, he thinks. The Westons are no part of this plan. He smiles. Say they should do it because they love me. He sees Rafe thinking, so my master is going to ask for Jane Seymour after all, for himself or for Gregory. He, Cromwell, has seen at Wolf Hall what Rafe could not see. Silent Jane in his bed, pale and speechless Jane. That is what Henry dreams of now. You cannot account for a man's fantasies, and Henry is no lecture. He has not taken many mistresses. No harm if he, Cromwell, helps ease the king's way towards her. The king does not mistreat his bedfellows. He is not a man who hates a woman once he has had her. He will write her verses, and with prompting he will give her an income. He will advance her folk. There are many families who have decided, since Anne Boleyn came up in the world, that to bask in the sunshine of Henry's regard is an Englishwoman's highest vocation. If they play this carefully, Edward Seymour will rise within the court and give him an ally where allies are scarce. At this stage, Edward needs advice, because he, Cromwell, has better business sense than the Seymours. He will not let Jane sell herself cheap. But what will Anne the Queen do if Henry takes as mistress a young woman she has laughed at since ever Jane waited upon her, whom she calls pasty face and milksop? How will Anne counter meekness and silence? Raging will hardly help her. She will have to ask herself what Jane can give the king that at present he lacks. She will have to think it through, and it is always a pleasure to see Anne thinking. When the two parties met after Wolf Hall, King's party and Queen's party, Anne had been charming to him, laying her hand on his arm and chattering away in French about nothing very much, as if she had never mentioned a few weeks before that she would like to cut off his head, as if she was only making conversation. It is well to keep behind her in the hunting field. She is keen and quick, but not too accurate. This summer she put a crossbow bolt in a straying cow, and Henry had to pay off the owner. But look, never mind all this. Queens come and go, so recent history has shown us. Let us think about how to pay for England, her king's great charges, the cost of charity and the cost of justice, the cost of keeping her enemies beyond her shores. From last year he has been sure of his answer. Monks, that parasite class of men, are going to provide. Get out to the abbeys and convents through the realm, he had told his visitors, his inspectors. Put to them the questions I will give you, 86 questions in all. Listen more than you speak, and when you have listened, ask to see the accounts. Talk to the monks and nuns about their lives and rule. I am not interested where they think their own salvation lies, whether through Christ's precious blood only or through their own works and merits in part. Well, yes, I am interested, but the chief matter is to know what assets they have, to know their rents and holdings, and whether, in the event it pleased the king as head of the church to take back what he owns, by what mechanism it is best to do it. Don't expect a warm welcome, he says. They will rush to liquidate their assets ahead of your arrival. Take note of what relics they have or objects of local veneration and how they exploit them, how much revenue they bring in by the year, for after that money is for all that money is made off the back of superstitious pilgrims who would do better to stay at home and earn an honest living. Press them on their loyalty, what they think of Catherine, what they think of the Lady Mary, and how they regard the Pope, because if the mother houses of their orders are outside these shores, have they not a higher loyalty, as they might term it, to some foreign power? Put this to them and show them what they are, that they are at a disadvantage. It is not enough to assert their fidelity to the king. They must be ready to show it, and they can do that by making your work easy. His men know better than to try to cheat him, but just to make sure he sends them out in pairs, one to watch the other. The abbey's bursars will offer bribes to understate their assets. Thomas More, in his room in the Tower, had said to him, "Where will you strike next, Cromwell? You are going to pull all England down." He had said, "I pray to God, grant me life only as long as I use my power to build and not destroy." Among the ignorant it is said that the king is destroying the church. In fact, he is renewing it. It will be a better country, believe me, once it is purged of liars and hypocrites. But you, unless you mend your manners towards Henry, will not be alive to see it. Nor was he. He doesn't regret what happened. His only regret is that More wouldn't see sense. He was offered an oath upholding Henry's supremacy in the church. This oath is a test of loyalty. Not many things in life are simple, but this is simple. If you will not swear it, you indict yourself, by implication, traitor, rebel. More would not swear. Then what could he do but die? What could he do but splash to the scaffold on a day in July when the torrents never stopped, except for a brief hour in the evening, and that too late for Thomas More? He died with his hose wet, splashed to the knees, and his feet paddling like a duck's. He doesn't exactly miss the man. It's just that sometimes he forgets he's dead. It's as if they're deep in conversation and suddenly the conversation stops. He says something and no answer comes back, as if they'd been walking along and More had dropped into a hole in the road, a pit as deep as a man, slopping with rainwater. You do, in fact, hear of such accidents. Men have died, the track giving way under their feet. England needs better roads and bridges that don't collapse. He is preparing a bill for Parliament to give employment to men without work, to get them waged and out mending the roads, making the harbors, building walls against the emperor or any other opportunist. We could pay them, he calculated, if we levied an income tax on the rich. We could provide a shelter, doctors if they needed them, their subsistence. We would all have the fruits of their work, and their employment would keep them from becoming moths or pickpockets or highway robbers, all of which men would do if they see no other way to eat. What if their fathers before them were moths, pickpockets, or highway robbers? That signifies nothing. Look at him. Is he Walter Cromwell? In a generation, everything can change. As for the monks, he believes, like Martin Luther, that the monastic life is not necessary, not useful, not commanded of Christ. There's nothing imperishable about monasteries. They are not part of God's natural order. They rise and decay like any other institutions, and sometimes their buildings fall down or they are ruined by lax stewardship. Over the years, any number of them have vanished or relocated or become swallowed into some other monastery. The number of monks is diminishing naturally because these days the good Christian man lives out in the world. Take Battle Abbey. 200 monks at the height of its fortunes, and now what? 40 at most. 40 fat fellows sitting on a fortune. The same up and down the kingdom. Resources that could be freed, that could be put to better use. Why should money lie in coffers when it could be put into circulation among the king's subjects? His commissioners go out and send him back scandals. They send him monkish manuscripts, tales of ghosts and curses, meant to keep simple people in dread. The monks have relics that make it rain or make it stop, that inhibit the growth of weeds and cure diseases of cattle. They charge for the use of them. They do not give them free to their neighbors. Old bones and chips of wood, bent nails from the crucifixion of Christ. He tells the king and queen what his men have found in Wiltshire at Maiden Bradley. The monks have part of God's coat and some broken meats from the Last Supper. They have twigs that blossom on Christmas Day. That last is possible, Henry says reverently. Think of the Glastonbury thorn. The prior has 6 children and keeps his sons in his household as waiting men. He says in his defense he never meddled with married women, only with virgins. And then when he was tired of them or they were with child, he found them a husband. He claims he has a license given under papal seal, allowing him to keep a whore. And giggles. And could he produce it? Henry is shocked. Away with him, such men are a disgrace to their calling. But these tonsure fools are commonly worse than other men. Does Henry not know that? There are some good monks, but after a few years of exposure to the monastic ideal, they tend to run away. They flee the cloisters and become actors in the world. In times past, our forefathers with their billhooks and scythes attacked the monks and their servants with the fury they would bring against an occupying army. They broke down their walls and threatened to burn them out, and what they wanted were the monks' rent rolls, the items of their servitude, and when they could get them, they tore them and put them on bonfires, and they said, "What we want is a little liberty, and to be treated like Englishmen after the centuries we have been treated as beasts."